Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious about side character energy, parenting edition. Side character energy, and specifically parenting edition. So this is a concept that I touched on in one of my earlier episodes, and I wanted to expand on it. I thought there's just a lot of different directions you can kind of go with it. And the way that it came about was I was looking for consistent childcare for my kids. So we had some amazing touch and go ad hoc babysitters, but I needed a consistent nanny. So if you've ever tried to find a nanny, it's very difficult to find someone that you trust, that you feel is okay, safe with your kids, especially if you don't have a referral. And so I was just throwing everything against the wall. I was asking friends for referrals. I was trying apps, and I just kept finding that I was coming up short with someone who'd be available or someone that I found and deemed trustworthy enough for me to entrust them with the most precious things in my life, my children. And one instance in particular was I had interviewed someone and I thought she would be a good fit. And I was going to have her come and do kind of like a modified time with the kids where I'd be working in the next room, but I could kind of listen and hear how she was with them. And right before she was supposed to come, she ghosted me, as in no show. And I had to work. I was still planning on listening, but I was going to listen and get my work done. So I was a little frustrated, obviously. And she sent me a text saying, "I'm so sorry. What came up for me was my anxiety. I don't know if now is a good time." So I really appreciated the honesty. I would have loved a little more heads up. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be really gracious in this moment. I'm going to voice text her back and just say take care of yourself. I understand. Thanks for your time. We'll part ways here. Then I didn't think about it again other than well, this is inconvenient for me today. And a couple days later, I was in a church setting on Sunday and she came top of mind. And to me, the impression I felt was did you even consider praying for her or thinking about her outside of how she just impacted you in that moment? And I was kind of convicted. I was like, no, definitely not, because she inconvenienced me. And I really didn't think about it past that. So then I sent her another text and I said, hey, it must be really difficult to live with that level of anxiety. And I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and I'm actually praying for you. And I hope that you have a better month. And she wrote back and she was like, no one's ever said anything like that. That deeply touches me. She was like, that made my entire month. And it really meant a lot to her. And then what kind of came crashing into me at that moment was out there right now, main character energy is everything. Be the main character of your story, take in the reins. And for some people, that's actually a really important message. For my husband, he should be more main character. He should be showing up more for himself and thinking of him that way. For some of us, we're already thinking we're the main character. It's kind of if you've seen that thing where it's oh, you look outside of a window on an airplane and you daydream and you're like, oh, I'm the character who's going through something and having a pensive song play right now. Some of us are already kind of thinking of ourselves like that. And so it came to mind to me of I'm main character in one story and one story only, which is my own. I'm side character in every other person I ever encounter. Anywhere, whether it's a short text message, whether it's my children, whether it's my friends, I'm a side character. And how can I put myself in a position to show up for the scenes of their movie and support them? And whether I'm literally in that scene for 10 minutes or if I'm there for whatever it looks like, how can I be the best supporting character for someone else? And so parenting, my kids are the main characters of their movie. I'm literally the side character parent. The movie is of their life. And what does it look like for me to approach their lives as different than mine, as different human beings with different wants and desires and different choices? And what does it look like to uniquely show up for them to the best of my ability? So my stage of life, which is parenting 2 toddlers. I have kids that by the time this airs, I think they'll be right at 2 and 4. What it looks like in the toddler era, where I'm at right now, is a lot of emotional regulation, a lot of teaching them what feelings are and what boundaries are okay. It's like, it's so okay to feel mad. It's not okay to kick your brother in the face. Or I totally get that you don't want to leave the playground. We're still going to leave. Like, what do you want to do last? You get to choose. Do you want to do the slide or the monkey bars? Like, a lot of it is the boundaries. A lot of it is the choicing. For my generation right now, the kind of trendy topic is like gentle parenting, which I think is wonderful. I think it's awesome because there's a little bit of a stigma where it's like, oh, that means no boundaries, which it actually doesn't. It's just treating your children as humans with respect, and you are the leader and you have clear boundaries. But also it's, not just saying because I'm the mom and I said so, or do what I say, or don't cry, or, all those past generations, which I'm going to go off a little bunny trail right now of, yeah, that must have been tough to even grow up with that. Those parents thought they were doing the best they can because they were like beaten as kids and they were like, spanked harshly. So them being like, okay, go and time out into the other room until you've calmed down was their best option at the time. Now my generation is like, oh, okay, so now you have to be isolated until you have approved emotions and you're, allowed to be presentable. Like that was messed up. But like, you have to also see in the lens of like, these are all reactions and hopefully going towards a better stage of health where I guarantee my kids are going to be doing something one day and I'll be like, oh, I remember how we handle that. And they would say, we don't do that anymore, Mom. And this is why. And this is the science. And it really messed us up. Or I'm going to have to be like, oh, thank you for telling me. I'm so glad you found a better way. And it's like, us as generations, it's so easy to hate on, the things of the past. And of course, there's some messed up stuff I don't want to include in my parenting. But also I want to see it through this lens and this unique window of time of who our kids are right now. And so for mine, I'm teaching them about emotions. I'm teaching them about safety. And even the way we chose our preschool is they call all of the students friends. And so everyone in her school is her friend. And they teach them about kindness and how to get along and how to speak up for themselves. There were other ones I toured that were great, but like she'll learn to read later. I'm not particularly worried about that. I'm not particularly worried about, well, I do want her to know her colors by this age. She's 4. But I mean, at the time, I'm like, okay, I want to have my kids in areas where they're fostering their character. Because again, like this is the rest of their life that's on this foundation is naming emotions is huge. Naming and owning emotions and not saying you made me mad, but I feel mad. Those are different things. Also boundaries where it's like, my daughter, I've taught her like to put her hand out and say stop loudly and to use her voice in that moment if someone's upsetting her. And it makes me even think about how my mom parented me in this stage. And my mom was so silly. So silly. We would leave banana peels in the kitchen on purpose, and then she would come and just like dramatically fall on them and is like, where did the monkeys come from? How did they leave banana peels here? We're like, Mom, it was us. And we just thought every time she really thought it was monkeys. Or I think about like how gentle and caring she was where she was going to potty train my brother. And she kept saying, it's potty training day. It's going to be so exciting and potty train. And then the day came and he was like, where's the train? Like, where's the potty train? And she was like, no, it means something different. And he was so devastated. So she ditched the potty training plan and they went and rode trains that day because that's what he had thought it was. So she was pivoting. Or I think about how one of my birthday parties, we got to choose really fun themes and I chose an upside down theme or like a backwards theme. So all of the girls came to the party that night in their pajamas. And then we changed to our regular clothes when it was time to go to bed. And for dinner, we had cereal and we did like a night swim. And my mom was standing on the diving board giving us all instructions for the night. And she accidentally slipped in with all of her clothes on. And we thought it was so funny. And then the next day, we had pizza for breakfast. And the cake was a beautiful cake. And then she turned it right over and flattened it. And we ate the cake upside down. So it was these elements of this era and this sweet, sweet time of childhood were very fun and very playful. And I never thought of my mom as the main character. I was the main character. That was my birthday party. And she was a hilarious side character. But it's interesting to pivot of being like, okay, what is what's my kid gonna remember from their birthday party? Like obviously it's them and their friends, but like even me stepping in, or even like my brother, he was looking forward to a train and he was disappointed. And my mom could have been like, well, I set aside the time. We're going to have you go on the potty. But she was like, oh, you thought it was a train? Okay, let's go ride trains. So I think it's also kind of holding like situations of life loosely and being able to pivot and go into where someone else is, and not just like the rigidity of like, this is what my expectations were. I think that's so much of even what like a side character does, is they go where the protagonist is going. They're open. There's a thing in improv like yes and, where if someone brings up an idea, it's yes and you add on top of that. Now a quick pause to hear from my sponsors. This is a weird segue, but have you ever been mid-dinner and your jeans are digging into your stomach and you just gotta unbutton them? Okay, good. Not just me. Hey, no shame. Ritual literally created Symbiotic Plus with that weird gut stuff in mind. It contains clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. Delayed release capsule designed to help survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon. An ideal place for probiotics to grow and thrive. Why include a postbiotic? It provides fuel to the cells that make up the gut lining and supports a healthy gut barrier. Win-win. Symbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. There's no more shame in your gut game. That's why Ritual is offering my listeners 30% off during your first month. Visit ritual.com/haven to start Ritual or add Symbiotic Plus to your subscription today. This episode is brought to you by Efficientaid. Efficientaid offers fractional virtual assistants whose sole purpose is to help people who are making a difference. Are you bogged down in your email and still managing your own calendar? Delegating those tasks to a high-caliber career assistant can free you up to utilize your time towards the areas of your best and highest use, allowing you to focus on the areas you truly thrive in. Learn more at efficientaid.com. That's efficient, AIDE.com. Okay, back to the episode. So if you heard my episode where I was talking about what men don't understand, I had my friend Janelle on there, who's a fellow female entrepreneur. And we talked about a mini female entrepreneur from her neighborhood who was an 11-year-old babysitter named Pearl, who handed out her resume at Halloween. And I had mad respect for her. And when I called the number on there, Pearl and her mom, Laura, answered. And I was so highly impressed with her, where she told me about her babysitting certificate that she could email me, that she showed the online course. She was CPR certified. She asked if my children had any allergies that she needed to be made aware of. And she was so highly trustworthy. I was almost just like, well, when can you start? Can it be tomorrow? And she was 11 at the time. And one, I was like, this little girl is very cool. And then two, my next thought was, who's her mother? Because she's really special. So Laura, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for putting that trust in Pearl, by the way.
Oh, well,
you were her first major client. So.
No way. Wow. She came with a fanny pack with Band-Aids and toys and everything. I think our first one was like a park or something. She was so prepared.
That was a lot of her on her own. Believe it or not.
I do believe it from her conversations. I do believe it's so in her. But I was talking with Janelle about it, and I was like, we need to take this lady out to lunch. We're like, she's further along than us. Like, we have toddlers. She has like a, almost preteen. And we did. And I was like, this conversation's so good. I'd love to bring it to the podcast. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Totally. So tell me a little bit before we even get into kids, because this is another one of my little tangents, is we are women first and mothers second. Like, just because you're a mom doesn't mean it's your whole identity. There's a lot of other elements that are really interesting about you, and motherhood is so important and so awesome, but it's not the whole picture. So I'd love to hear about that, and then we'll get into motherhood, if that's okay.
That sounds great. I do like to say that starting off, I was a child of a military helicopter pilot. So the reason I say that is because I moved around a ton. It caused me to really have to adapt to situations. It wasn't the greatest when it was happening, but man, I'm so grateful for that now, just living in different places. And so that led me to a career in television. I worked in entertainment for a long time. And then at 38, I became a single mom, not 100% by choice, but thrilled nonetheless. And so I took on having that baby like it was my job.
Yeah.
I read, I don't know, I have a picture in Pearl's baby book, like 54 books, before she was born,
Oh my gosh.
which I'm sure I used like 2 things from those books, but it helped me feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really took on that role when I was in the middle of a huge career as in television that I cared a lot about and had put a lot of work into.
Wow. So much I want to unpack there, but you were even saying like at I don't know if you said the height of your career or like a very intense time in your career, you find out you're pregnant.
Yes.
Did you have a question of like, even with being a single mother is a different route? You're like, okay, how do I do this? Like what was coming through your head? Obviously you're reading the baby books because the baby's like, you're going to be a mom for sure. But it's what does that look like with career?
100%. I worked for, I worked for History at the time, and then I transitioned in my pregnancy to a new job with Discovery. And I traveled a lot. There was so much to my job, and I was very concerned, like, how am I going to do this? And, I was a vice president at the time. I was 38 years old, but there were parts of me that were like, wow, I've produced a lot of things, but I have not produced a child, and I have not done it by myself.
Right.
So it was definitely like uncharted territory for me.
Wow. So what did those first couple years look like? Like where Pearl's a baby, what were you doing, and what did like a week look like for you?
Well, some of it is a complete and total blur.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of it was nothing like I pictured. And that started with, I came in wanting to produce my birth. I had a birth plan with everything listed. And I basically have that also in her baby book with a giant circle with a line through it, because nothing that I wrote on there came true. It was sort of like the universe takes over and you can't produce your way out of the universe. So it kind of started like that. I had also at the time BlackBerrying. I brought my BlackBerry to the hospital with me. I told my team that they needed to check in with me during maternity leave. I basically turned that BlackBerry off, and I didn't pick it up for about 6 months. And again, anyone who knew me at the time was like, what? Because I was very, very attached to my work and to that BlackBerry. But once she came along, my entire world changed, and I realized that was going to be my most important job. Still is.
Wow. It's so true. It makes me think of, because it's the same. I'm very focused, very on track. And my first child came surprisingly a month early. And I had already trained my maternity leave, and I was like emailing from like the hospital bed, and he was like, stop emailing. He's like, everything's okay. And I was like, but it's early. Is everything going to be okay? He was like, just go. And I needed that mental permission, because I was like,
Sure,
this is so inconveniencing for anyone who's trying to step into like the shoes I'm trying to do. And so when I got that release, it was the same, where I was like, okay, it's out the window. And then even on my maternity leave, I remember thinking, I need to rework what a productive day looks like in my mind. And I internally defined a productive day is I cuddled my baby and she's fed. And I was like, that to me.
Shower, brushing the teeth, not important.
Oh no. No, I didn't even say diapers in there. I mean, I literally was like, if she's eating and if she's cuddled, that's my bar.
Yeah.
And mentally I had to be like, I've had so much productivity. To me, because again, like someone who's achieving, someone who has a list, someone who has ideas, it's like, and those sweet moments of maternity leave, like, okay, that's it. That's the moment for that day, which is kind of a gear shift.
Absolutely. Your life boils down to essentials, and providing that to a baby, to someone else. And it, like you said, it's about, eating basically and sleeping.
Yeah.
And, what a different mind shift for people that are very, very focused on multitasking and, being in meetings and traveling all over the world. Your world gets really, really small, yet so big, so important.
It's so true. And it is such a unique slice of life. And for me, it feels like it took me a while to get there. And then let's talk about reentry after maternity leave, because it took me a while to get out of there. Where I remember I asked some friends before I came back, I was like, what's it like? And they're like, you're going to think about your baby the whole time. And that's okay. They're like, you may even cry and that's okay. But it was clunky. I remember even like my boss at the time was like very gracious, but he very openly was like, yeah, you're definitely not on your game. Like things are slipping. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know what else to tell you. Like, and he
Mhm.
is very gracious. I was very glad on that. But I was also like, getting back into a gear shift was hard for me.
Absolutely. And the guilt of things, you got guilt on both sides,
Mhm.
right? Like I bawled my eyes out when I went to work, probably the first like month or so every day. I was so sad to go home. I mean, to go to work, which, was not my normal mindset. Normally I was thrilled to go to work. So
Mhm.
going to work was tough. And then having to say like, hey, 6 o'clock, I gotta go. My nanny has to go home. Like I had never been one of those people that's like, clock out, gotta go home.
Yeah.
But I had to kind of lay it down. Like I need to leave at a certain time. There's going to be a period of time where I'm not available because I'm not just because I'm a single mom, but I'm a mom. I need to fulfill that part of my life during these hours. And then I can jump back on for a call later or whatever. But, this 6 to 8 to 9 p.m., like I'm not available. And that was just a huge mind shift for me. But the company didn't fall apart. My career didn't fall apart. It worked out. And being able to put those boundaries out and I think it showed a lot of other people on my team that, working a whole bunch of hours doesn't necessarily equal great work, right? Because I was very focused when I was at the office or in the job because I knew I had to get out at another time and devote myself to something else.
And you were ahead of the game there because that like the whole work-life balance or like, time decompression was not popular then.
No.
It was kind of seen as like, oh, you're not the last standing in the office. You're not the first in. That was a different era. I'm glad we're kind of removing from it, but that was kind of pioneering at the moment.
It was, and it was terrifying. That was the big part is I kept thinking, what if I lose my job? Not only is it the thing that I love, but I'm the breadwinner and I don't know how to do anything else. And that was terrifying. I spent many nights really thinking about that. But once I started to realize like, I'm going to do the very best that I can at my job, but I'm also going to do the very, very best that I can as a mom. And this balance thing, no, it's one thing. It's one thing. Your life is one thing. And yes, I think that was a good terminology at the time when people were trying to come out of like, don't just be a workaholic, you got to balance it out. Yes. But integrating, what's going on in your life. And I think COVID taught us that a lot. It's like people have lives and children and partners outside of their job. And if those things don't all kind of work together, they will suffer both in the job front and the home front. And that's not good for anything.
It's true. You really can't compartmentalize your whole life by any means.
Absolutely not.
So that's babyhood. We're going to fast forward to toddlerhood because when Janelle and I took you to lunch, there was one element that stood out to me where you were like, Pearl went to kindergarten and all of the kids would come up to her and ask her to zip up their jackets because she was the only one who knew how to zip.
Actually, that was preschool.
That was preschool?
That was preschool. She was 4 and we lived on the East Coast. And one day after preschool, her teacher was like, Lara, can I talk to you? And I'm like, oh my God, what did Pearl do? I was like, ugh, And she's like, I just want to tell you that like your child out of the 15 kids in the class is the only one that knows how to zip up her jacket. And she said because we were on the East Coast, so they went in and out of, outside and inside a lot. And so she said that she would walk around and go with a teacher and zip everyone's jacket. And I was, in some ways I was kind of like, how could these parents not teach their 4-year-olds how to zip up their own jacket? Like I got stuff, I'm carrying stuff. I got my bag. Like you zip up your jacket, you grab your backpack, like you can walk, you can hold things.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to do these things. So it was a little shocking to me, but then at the same time I was like, oh, okay, I did something right. I taught her how to zip up her own jacket.
It's so interesting though, because ever since you told us that at lunch, like I'll be out with my kids and she'll be like, can you carry my water, my jacket? And I was like, if you brought it, you can carry it. Because before I'd be like, if I had a free hand, I wouldn't think about it. But I was like, oh, like I need to teach my kids like autonomy, self-responsibility for what they're carrying. And if you don't want to carry something all day, then leave it at home or leave it in the car.
Yeah. Or these parents that carry like their fourth grader's backpack all the way to the school door for them. I mean, I know they're being sweet and no judgment, but at the same time, I'm like, you know, when I travel with Pearl or do things with her, she packs her own suitcase. She packs her own suitcase. I give her a list. We make a list. This was when she was younger. We'd make a list together. She would pack it. I would check it. And then it was up to her to roll that suitcase, carry the, you know, I sound like it's kind of like child labor or something, but I mean, it really was important to me that she have some independence in understanding what it takes to move around in the world, which is pack your own bag and carry it.
But here's the thing. I respect that because there's nuance there because I'm like, okay, I don't mind my child being uncomfortable if it's a training opportunity for them. Like we read this book in my mom book club called like The Gift of Failure. And it was saying if your kid keeps forgetting something, then when you bring it to the school, then they're just going to like, why would they even have a reason to remember? But if they then get in trouble, get a bad grade, then they're going to remember, oh, I shouldn't, you know, leave this at home. Or it's not saying completely leave them off to their own. It's like, hey, how can we help you remember? Do you want to set a reminder, you know, on a sticky note and put it by the door? Or like those kind of elements where it's not just completely on the, you know, kid, you're like laissez-faire, but it's training them for life. We're like, if you have a work project, like, and you don't deliver, there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Pearl has turned a carpool around before to say, please go back because my mom's not going to drive it to school. please go back, you know. But there has been a couple of times where it was my fault that she didn't have something. And of course, like if I've got to help her out, yes, absolutely. But for the most part, she knows I'm not going to bring it to her if she forgot it.
I think that's so good. I want to camp a little bit because this is my era and then I want to jump into preteens. So I want to tell a little bit about what I'm learning in toddlerhood, and please pipe in if you also have something.
Yeah.
So for me, the kids like love a plan. Like that is where they feel very safe, very clear of like, okay, at night we brush our teeth, put our pajamas on, read a book, go to bed. I'm counting on my hands because Isley, she now calls it her 5-finger plan. Because I didn't realize I was counting my hands. I'll be like, okay, we're going to go home, eat lunch, go to bed. And then she's like, what about the other 2 fingers? And I would have to like make up stuff so it hits 5. And so it's like every time she's like, what's the 5-finger plan? And so it's like, but we'll say it and she can recite it. That said, whatever as far as genders, take this with your own child. But girls are more receptive and able to plan. I read that boys, you have to give them 1 step at a time, like 1 step. And it's better if you can touch them while you're telling them and even like kind of looking at them. Like
just to help with them like connecting with you.
To help with them connecting of like young boys, it's very hard for them to remember multiple steps. Isaac can literally remember 5 at like 3 years old. But like Echo, it's like you put one hand and you go, when we get home, take your shoes by the door and then come to me. Like 1 at a time.
For
it's
the
like,
next step.
For the step. Shoes off and then come to me. Because obviously he's little, but like it's just the different wiring, which I was like, whatever, genders. But I'm like, oh, I see it. He's so act first, think later. My daughter is more like, what's the parameters? What's that? And so also like getting to know your kids of like what's going to be like right for them. But Echo's a 1 step at a time guy. Isley can literally do 5. But like with me traveling, I'll do a written calendar and I'll have like the days that I'm gone. And then I try and even do like pictures of who's going to be with them that day. And like maybe some little exciting things. Or if there's not exciting, then I'll kind of let them go to the candy store and pick a candy for each day I'm out of town that they can eat. But I like to kind of work with them before traveling of, okay, mommy's going to be gone 4 days. This day you're going to be with, you know, Miss Angel, and then daddy's going to come home and put you to bed. And then in the morning, Isley, you're going to go to school. And then Echo, you know, that kind of thing where then we say it over and over. And then she gets to cross off the day. Like they're so visual. They don't have concepts. And toddlers get overwhelmed and scared when they don't know what's happening next.
That's so good. Talk about the, you know, sort of the secondary character part. It took me a little while to realize like, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but I just always felt like, well, she's my daughter, so she should process things just the way I do, or she should like a list like I do, or, you know, and like you saying the part about Echo and how he learns, I mean, it took me a while to learn that just because my brain processes a list that may not be, that's actually not the way that Pearl, or a list from me to her, no good.
Wow.
If I talk to her about what needs to get done, she's going to make the list her way. But it took me a few years to really understand that. But I like that you're doing like the visual pictures because they can't read yet. So having an understanding and like, again, being that secondary character where you're not just like, okay, do this, do this, do this, but like giving them the information and letting them process.
Like, what does it mean for like, these are their days that we're planning out for them. They don't even have a real choice on who is going to be with them and where they're going. But talking about even like different for each kids. I one time was at lunch with one of my mom friends who it was before I had kids or something. I was pregnant and I was like, can I take you to lunch and ask you everything? And she had a little boy who was probably about 3 or 4 at the time. And he was getting upset and she came next to him. She put her arm around him and was talking in his ear. And afterwards I was like, hey, why did you do that? She was like, oh, I found that if I look him in the eye, he gets more aggressive. She's like, but if I come and speak in his ear and like put my hand around him and be gentle tones, he's more receptive. And that to me unlocked where I'm like, it's the wild, wild west of parenting. I'm like, it's your rules. It's your kid. Like you never know what child you're going to have. And it's up to us as parents. They're going to be who they're going to be. It's up to us as parents to be like, who are you and how can I foster the best environment for you to thrive, which is going to be different.
And I never really understood that, to be honest. And even that has made me a better boss too. Because I was always like, I'm the boss, do this, I'm the mom, and it doesn't work like that.
Right.
And so understanding that like not just kids, but coworkers and partners and everybody learns different, responds to things differently. And, I used to sort of struggle with like bending. I felt like I was bending to other people's ways, but it's not that. It's fine, you being able to present yourself in a way that someone else is going to respond in the right way and hear you. And that's with kids or adults or anyone.
It's true. It's how effective do you want to be? And that effective is going to be different for depending on who's the listener and who you're talking to in that element. That's such a great point. Okay. Going into like preteen, one of the other things, I'm trying not to be nervous. I'm like, it doesn't have to be scary. But one thing that you told, I want you to expand on however else you want to take it. But you were saying that in preteen, it's basically like a pool and that the kid is the one swimming, but you're the edge of the pool. So you're the one that they go to when they want to rest on the edge of the pool or talk, but like you're not jumping in, saving them. You're also not really jumping in, swimming with them. You're just always there. So what does that look like in this slice of life with how old's Pearl now?
She is a couple days away from turning 14.
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
Well, I wish I could take credit for that pool thing, but I cannot. I highly recommend a book called Untangled, and I'm going to get the title right. Guiding Teenage Girls Through the 7 Transitions into Adulthood by Lisa D'Amour. And I like studied this book, like highlighted it, still look at it.
Wow.
But the edge of the pool thing was really, as a visual person, it helped me a lot. I mean, there are times when I am driving my car and thinking she's talking to me about something. I'm like, edge of the pool, because I just want to jump in there and fix it or say something or, go grab her and pull her to the side. And I'm like, got to be the edge of the pool. And, certainly not looking for my kid to drown, and I would absolutely run in if she was drowning, but recognizing that, she is going to swim to the edge of the pool when she needs me. And I do feel that. I really feel that. And I think that comes with, trust and her and me, like being the side of the pool. I think that sometimes when you go in and try to fix everything, then especially in this, what I'm experiencing so far, because I'm certainly no expert, but when I go in and try to fix things to somebody who's 13, almost 14, it makes it worse. But if I can be there and listen and guide and wait for her to swim over to me, it's going to, again, be a lot more effective.
It's so true. I remember, so for me, like, I'm not close to that in parenthood. I'm actually closer to that in my experience, it feels like. So for me, I remember being like 13, 14. It was weird when the moms would like talk back from the front seat all their opinions on what we were talking about. I remember being like, you're here? What are you doing?
Right.
Like, you're not supposed to be listening or what? I didn't even think of, the moms that much, but the moms that I loved, were the ones who, like, you went up to them, initiated. They weren't trying to force anything on you. Or even like my mom. Like, my mom was incredible. Even after I got my driver's license and I loved it and it was so fun. But after a couple months, I was like, Mom, will you still drive me to school now? I was like, I just miss our talks. Like, I miss the morning talks. I missed her in the afternoon.
I'm sure she was like, yes.
Yeah, she totally was. She was really thrilled by that. But it's because she wasn't like forcing, her opinions on me. Or my other favorite mom in high school was this mom, and she had 5 boys. And she was so cool and so awesome. And I was like, this lady's amazing. Like, I probably wanted to date her kid just so I could hang out with the mom. I was like, this lady's great. Can I hang out with you? Like, she was so open and interested and not like pushy. I feel like that's also when it's that era where and when you said edge of the pool, I'm like, oh, like that visual makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like a struggle because, I want to be the cool mom, because there's a lot of girls hanging out at my house and I love them and I want to, I want to participate, but I do have to I do try to watch myself as I'm trying to be the cool mom, that I'm not trying to parent them or inject myself, like you said, into a conversation that they weren't even talking to me, right? Or, resist the temptation to add my 2 cents to something unless they ask me. And they do ask me. So that's been fun. I can always say to Pearl, well, your friends think I'm cool because they're asking me.
Your friends are
you may
asking me.
not.
That's so funny because even like, obviously, like, that dynamic is so unique, but like, the way that Pearl speaks about you when she's in my house is just like, she has such revere and such regard for you. And
well, that's good to know.
It's good to know. I feel like sometimes you hear it outside.
Yeah.
But like, that's also where I was like, this is a great modern day. Like, you live in LA, you live in a tough city. You're also a working woman. I'm like, who is doing what I would like in a couple years? Like, what does it look like? And so even for your availability for that lunch, your availability for this podcast means so much to me. I want to learn, like, teach me what you've learned. So thank you.
Girl, I don't know. I'm following as much as my gut as I can while doing what you're doing, which is talking to other people that I think are doing a good job. And then, reading 52 books that I may or may not use any information from. But I think just the whole thing that your podcast is about, which is about being curious and talking, I find that's the thing that helps. That's what's actually helped me in this stage with Pearl. We recently, she was away at my parents' house and I was kind of just doing some thinking as we reset for 8th grade. And I'm like, okay, there's some things I want to talk to her about. And so I just sent her in notes. I like made this little agenda like I would at work. I made a little agenda of some things that I wanted to cover. And I texted it because we shared grocery lists that way and stuff. So I thought I'll just send over these kind of heavy topics like homework, makeup, boys, texting, all the things I wanted to talk to her about. And I said, we're going to have a family meeting when you get back. And I want you to add to this list too and talk to me about the things that you need from me. And she calls me, I barely hit send. She calls me and she's like, Mom, did you read this in some book?
Just straight up calling you out.
And I was like, yes, I did, because I've never been a mom to a 13-year-old and I'm doing the best I can. But yeah, she called me out.
Savage. Man, preteens, they'll get you. Man. You gotta watch out.
Yeah, but our meeting was great. It really was. And I think listening to the things that she needed from me, which that's also hard to do when you're like, you're a little punk, 13-year-old. What do you know? But there are some things that she said to me that I was like, okay, fine. I should be able to give you that.
It's good feedback. I think it's great. Okay, going even a little tangent of like a punk 13-year-old, of like whether it's a mom who was that for you, whether it was like a babysitter or a trusted teacher, like you can do this even if you're not a parent. Like you can be this for the kids around you. And I've had great experiences with that. I've also had some kind of annoying ones. Like even that, like you joke, okay, you call them punk teenager. You won't really say that. One time I had a babysitter who literally told me, she was like, you know, I was like 12 or 13. I probably was a punk, but she was like, you know, you at your age, you think you're so much cooler than you are, but you'll look back and you realize you weren't. And then I was like, in my head, I didn't say this, but I was like, you're the one making fun of a 12-year-old.
Exactly.
How cool do you think you are? I literally thought like, no, girl, I'm not the one who's making fun of someone 10 years younger than me. I'm pretty sure it's you. But that stuck with me where I'm like, nope, not going to go to you with anything.
Yeah.
Ever. Because you're belittling me. Even if it was the truth, it's holding your tongue on those moments and being there when they're willing to come to you too.
And both my little punk 13-year-old and many others have taught me so much. Like she teaches me on a daily basis, and there is stuff that I realize, wow, you know, I'm having to like really think about my own values again, because I'm working with, you know, a daughter who's going through a lot of things for the first time that are big and heavy and all those things. And, you know, realizing that she's doing the best that she can, and me understanding that, you know, it's up to me to help her and support her through that, not try to clash. Because I think that's what happens is that, I mean, I remember, you know, some pretty big clashes with my mom and wanting to make sure that, sure, her and my daughter and I are going to have those and some dust ups here and there. But for the most part, I definitely want to be a safe space for her.
Totally. And even talking, so as far as like side character, you know, secondary, supporting, whatever it is, it's aligning with something that's interesting to them. And so I think about how you guys had like your shared Instagram for your fashion, and like you guys would talk about your fits and your clothes.
Well, she very much finagled her way into Insta, which I'm told I'm not supposed to say Insta anymore. So I'm supposed to just say Instagram.
Pearl, you have editing capabilities. Yeah. If you are embarrassed by anything, it will be cut from this episode. I trust your judgment. So if the listener doesn't hear this, it's because Pearl cut it.
That's right. But she kind of finagled her way in. I guess she was like 10 maybe. And she did not have an Instagram account. And she was like, but Mom, what if we did this Instagram account together and it could be, you know, Gen X versus Gen Y, and we could talk about our things. And I mean, I'm sitting there, look, I work behind the camera, and I was like, absolutely not, no way. And my mom kind of overheard this conversation, and she's like, Lara, if your preteen, almost preteen is asking you to do something with her, why are you saying no to that? She's like, there's going to come a time when she's not going to want to do things with you. And so I got very, very uncomfortable doing these like dances and, you know, fit checks and all these things that I was really not that, you know, get ready with us, all these things. But now it's a couple years later, and we don't do them as much as we used to. And now I'm like, man, but it is very cool. Like I love that we can connect on that level. And when she asked me like, let's do a haul from Sephora. If you don't know what a haul is, that's basically where you just brag about what you just bought at a store, which I was always like, what are we doing? But you know, that is the find a way to connect, find a way to like do something that, you know, matters to her, that she's interested in. And so, yeah, we've got our little thing
But
going.
I love that. It's about her, you know, like, and you were willing to get outside of yourself and support her in that way. And that's why I'm both like thrilled, but also very nervous. Like, what are my kids going to be into? Like, am I going to have to learn the rules of soccer? Or like,
probably you might.
I'm going to have to, you know, or God forbid, please don't be into anime like your dad. Please don't make me. I'll do it if you want me to, because I love you. But also, like, what if it's an interest that I'm bored by, you know, like, but I'm going to do it. I'm really like, if it's a shared interest, all the better. But if it's something new, then I'm also like, wow, I'd never know about this world if it wasn't for my child. And and we're in it now and we're going to go into it. So I like that part.
Yeah. By the way, Pearl Y Lara X has a lot more followers now.
Oh,
yes.
Are we tagging this so people can go check it out?
Maybe because we actually did a TikTok that I was like, this is not even funny. And I can't remember. We have like 100,000 views, and I don't know. We blew up. We went viral. We went viral. So yeah,
these are far past the early days.
Yes, the early days.
I'm excited. Okay, let's open to some questions. That sound good?
Mm-hmm. So it looks like one of the first questions is, how do you parent different personalities?
I think you remove yourself from being like everything has to be even, Steven, and fair, because every child is unique. And I think you start with the posture of, I'm a different parent because you're a different child. So I'm going to parent differently your sister than I am you because you're a different person. And things aren't always going to be completely even, where growing up, like my siblings were all 1 year apart. Like literally, we were born 90, 91, 92.
Wow.
3 kids under 3. And I was like, how did you do that? But a lot of it, like my mom was, to me, in my eyes, still super mom. But it was very like, okay, this is your special day with grandmother, or you got to have this last. So it was like, it was trying to be fair. But what I read in Dr. Becky's Good Inside was saying sometimes that can instill sibling rivalry, because then it's, oh, you got this, so I deserve this next. Or you're just gauging what you should get because someone else, which in theory, it's like I talked about up front. It's like our parents are doing the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be some type of like reaction back from it.
That individuality thing that we were talking about earlier, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like Isley can synthesize very quickly. Like I was giving her a bath the other day, and she did something like to Echo that I didn't approve of, but it wasn't enough to like discipline or say anything. So I was just thinking in my head, and she goes, "Why'd you make that face, Mommy?" And I was like, what face? And then she did it back to me, and I said, well, I didn't like what you did to Echo, but I was thinking about what I wanted to say about it. Like, I can't even hide my facial expressions.
Absolutely. Pearl will walk in, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, and something may be a little bit wrong. And I'm like, God, I can't get one over on her. Our kids know us.
I think it's true. Like
really well.
They know us. They know our energy. They know our thoughts. Like, so with Isley, I have to be very direct. And I also have to tell her like, hey, like if I'm feeling upset, it deeply upsets her. Like she'll be like, it's okay, Mommy. It's okay. She'll even say, don't cry, which I have never in my life told her not to cry. I think crying's great. But I think it's because she's feeling overwhelmed and I'm like, hey, it's okay when Mommy cries. I'm going to be okay. This is my problem to fix. Like trying to also take the mantle back of like the pressure and the weight of the world isn't on her, or even like she's talking about different personalities. She has soccer in school, and if I'm not there, she goes to town, loves it. If I'm there, she wants to come and sit on my lap the whole time and like doesn't want to play. And one of my friends is like, why do you think she's doing that? And I said, I don't know her well enough yet. I've only known her for 3 years. I'm sure later on I can ask why she did that, but I also don't want to assume why she's doing something. I'm just going to be a safe person and say, okay, trust yourself. When you're ready, go back out. And I probably just won't go watch soccer because she does better when I'm not there, you know?
That's pretty great that you're thinking that way, honestly. I don't think a lot of parents would like say, I don't know my kid as well, or maybe I need to remove myself so that they can have this experience without me.
I mean, like, she does better. Obviously, I'm her safe place, you know, and I want to always, always be that. And I'm not going to force her to go do, you know, things outside. But maybe she does just need me not there to find that more within herself, where she would tap into me, where Echo, on the other hand, deep emotions, big emotions, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. He doesn't say,
Sounds like a teenage girl.
I mean, please give me tips for Echo. He is very teenage girl. Not every, like anything, it's not a yes, it's a yeah, like guttural, yeah, like so loud, so into it. And then if he's upset, it's heartbreaking. He cradles his face in his hands and he falls on the floor. And usually he walks away. Like he knows, like since he's been like, had the ability to walk, he will walk to the other side of the room. And like
to take a minute.
Aww. And I'm like, Echo, like, do you want space or comfort? And he just goes, pace. I'm like, okay. But he like wants you looking at him, like, but he just needs the time to feel the big emotions, even if you're giving him exactly what he wanted. Like he
Mhm.
just is feeling an overwhelm of emotion and then he comes back when he's ready. And the way that I connect with him, he's a very visceral guy. So it's cuddles, it's touches, it's foot rubs. It's very like when I think of him, even my hands, like they go strong, they go
Mhm.
present, like they're completely different. Isley's gentle. One look could send her into tears. Like Echo, man, it takes a lot for that little tank to be upset. But like, how did you get to know Pearl over time? Because again, like she doesn't have siblings. So it's like
Mhm.
just her in that front. And like, how did you know, oh, wait, you still need a unique touch?
I mean, other people, honestly. Like sometimes I would get upset because like I was working a lot, but I had an amazing nanny. And a lot of times I would walk into an event at school or something and be like, oh, you're Pearl's mom. So they really knew Pearl sometimes before they knew me,
Mhm.
many times before they knew me. And they had a big opinion about Pearl way before. I mean, same thing happened to you. You know, you
Yes.
met Pearl first before me. And so sometimes like you saying even earlier when you said, how Pearl talks about me when I'm not there,
Mhm.
these are the things that you have to listen to,
Mhm.
when teachers tell you, oh no, she's doing great on this, or no, absolutely, she's paying attention, or when they come with some of the negative things, sometimes I think we always go, that's not my kid. That's not my kid. But like understanding that we're all complicated,
Mhm.
not necessarily complicated, but we have many different parts of us. And so I think listening to when other people will tell you things about your child, and I think being open to what those are,
Mhm.
and understanding that sometimes, like you were saying, your child may act a certain way when you're not there, and that's them too.
Mhm.
And then coming home, like right now, as the side of the pool mom in the teenage years, a lot gets unloaded sometimes when she comes home, and I think, oh my gosh, she must be so upset when she's at school. She's like doing great at school, happy, all that, but when she comes to me, sometimes she needs to unload that, and I'm helping her hold that.
Mm.
But it's hard to not think, wait, is she miserable all the time? No,
Mhm. Where are
So
there safe containers?
yeah.
And that's kind of just so much of it too, of just being that place to receive
Hmm.
where they feel the safest.
Yeah.
Let's do another question.
Okay.
What do you do when the person caretaking for your child does things differently than you would?
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who has had to say to myself, I need for my daughter to be able to trust others, even if I'm not there. Right. So I think, first of all, you just want to choose very carefully who is taking care of them when you're not there,
Mhm.
and understanding that you're not going to be there all the time. Even if you are a stay at home mom or as close as you can be, you're going to be away from them at times. And so I don't know, a couple of things come to mind. One of the caretakers was actually my dad at one point. Pearl is very much a person that if she gets something in her mind, she will do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. Hounding, begging,
She's
coercing,
persistent.
persistent. And my dad was actually, she was at my parents', and my mom and I were doing something. My dad had taken her, and they both came walking back in the door. And I could just tell from the look on her face that something went on that was not
A little too
a little,
satisfied.
yeah. And it turns out that my dad had taken her driving.
Mm.
And I was so like, what?
Mhm.
And in that moment, I kind of had to say to myself, okay, it happened.
Yeah, it's done
It's
already.
done already. Um, what do I want to say to both my dad and my daughter? And, in the end, like there's a lot of kids now who are afraid to get their driver's license. Did you
Mm.
know that's a thing? Like there's a lot of kids who are not getting their driver's. Like when I was growing up, when you turned 16, you were waiting
Right.
a moment. There's a lot of kids now who
Because they're
are,
anxious?
Mhm.
Huh.
And Pearl is one of those kids who is counting the days to her driver's license. But my dad just grew up in the South, and they drove on back roads, and,
Oh,
it was a
yeah.
thing. They
My
were
grandmother
driving.
was driving at like 12.
Same. Yeah. Well, Pearl started driving when she was 11. But now, I'm like, okay, it wasn't exactly the choice that I would have made for her at the time,
Mhm.
but it's taken her in a place where she probably is going to be a really good driver when she does get her license.
Wow.
Because so I'm trying to look at it from that perspective.
I even think of everyone who watches my kid differently. I've noticed they take the kids to the park differently. Some people like bring a diaper bag completely stocked, snacks. They put the sunscreen on the way that I would like for my oldest, who's pretty fair skinned and can sunburn, like all of the stuff. And then some of them just fly by the seat of their pants.
Mm-hmm.
Do they bring a spare diaper? Who knows? You know?
Yeah, I had a nanny for a long time that when Pearl was younger, and she didn't drive. And at first, I mean, I loved her so much, but as Pearl got a little older, I was like, how's this going to work? But she took the bus. That was her thing. She took the bus. Mm-hmm. And so I had to and I wasn't necessarily really comfortable with Pearl being on public transportation on a bus. However, Pearl knows how to use a public transportation now. Mm-hmm. And in some cities that's a given, but in a lot of places it's not. She ended up developing this cool relationship with the bus driver. They knew her. And now I think to myself, wow, it really was safer for her to be on a bus than driving in a car.
Wow.
You know? And at the time it was a little bit uncomfortable for me because I was like, I want her to be picked up. But no, my nanny walked from the bus stop to pick her up from preschool, and they walked back to the bus stop and took the bus home, and then, to the bus stop and walked to our house. Mm-hmm. But that was a very different experience. My daughter still talks about that.
It's so true. I think that's it. I think it's different experiences.
Yeah.
So like whether it's like a bus stop or even for like my kids, I'm like, there's not one way to go to the park. I go to the park the same way because that's me. Like I'm going to do it. But sometimes you're not going to have socks. Sometimes you're going to have one spare diaper, and then you got to
roll with it.
You got to roll with it. Like Erin was with Isley at the park, and she was like, oh, I have to go potty. He's like, oh, let's find a restroom. She goes, oh no, Teddy lets me pee on the grass over here. Because it's a park that their nanny takes him to. So he's like, okay, let's try that. Or sometimes one of my favorite nannies, her name's Teddy. She'll send me a picture of them like at the metro. Or Isaac will drive by and be like, oh, we got donuts there. And I'm like, you did, Part of me is like, there's different expressions. And if I trust someone, and there's non-negotiables, I'm like, please feed them every 3 hours and give them a protein, and like love them and care for them. If you guys do everything rogue, then, I mean, my kids need to experience other people.
That's right.
Other people are safe.
Yeah, I was so like the nutrition thing was so huge for me when Pearl was a baby. And I mean, breastfed, I made all her baby food. Honestly, she never ate from a jar. I mean, I prided myself on this. And
no, you miss 52 books? Never. No, that doesn't track.
And we were on a road trip and with our family, and I had my little Pearl was, I don't know, not maybe a year, if that. No, probably not quite a year. Put her in the baby seat at McDonald's. I had my cooler of all the homemade baby food, and I set it down, and I told my nieces and nephews, I'll be right back. I'm just going to run to the bathroom, and then I'll feed Pearl. I'm gone for 2 seconds. I come back. Her cousin has given her a handful of McDonald's French fries, and I was like, I mean, it was... My niece was like, but Aunt Lara, she loves them. Look at her. She loves them. And she really did. I mean, it was like, the kid had probably never actually had salt before. And it didn't kill her.
No.
It was okay. It was a great way. It's a great story. And she got to experience McDonald's French fries with her family, Yeah. But at the time, boy, that really, I thought the world was ending.
So true, though. Those are the lines that kind of divide too. So part of me, even when I'm thinking of hearing this, is like, let's be gentle, like with one another. It's like, It's family, it's memories. Obviously, we're talking about someone who's going to do something differently than you, which I think is a lesson for all of us outside of parenting. It's outside of everything. It's like, people are going to do things differently. How can we respect one another? And even bringing it back, like that's my hope for this podcast, is the equivalent of, if you're organic, I'd like to feed you a French fry.
A McDonald's
French fry.
They are the best, by the way.
I don't know, girl. We can get into it.
Oh.
I mean, they don't die. Like they stay there. That can't be real food.
So good. They really
I will
are
admit they're
good.
tasty.
Yeah. all right.
Whether or not they're real food, that's
Not
debatable.
that's true.
Okay.
But they do taste pretty good.
Okay, I align with you on that one. But overall, the concept of this podcast, I love it to have different opinions. I'd love to have and welcome different dialogues and different ways to express. Are you letting an 11-year-old drive? Awesome. Are you the mom who's not cool with that? Awesome. You know, like I want to have this open. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
I had so much fun. I've loved
too.
Pearl for years and then you adjacent. But whenever we took you to lunch, I was like, oh, I love her too.
Oh, thank you. I'm loving listening to your podcast.
Thank
You're doing
you.
such a great job with it.
Thank you. I'm
Really.
having fun. I'm
Thank
having
you.
a lot of fun. So, okay, we are at the end of the episode where I'm going to ask you to like, follow, subscribe me on YouTube and on Instagram at Haven the Podcast. That's Instagram and TikTok. I do my Q&As there, but I'm going to have a unique and new ask too, is I'd love for you to share this podcast with your friends. I'd love for other people to be listening in long form. A lot of people are listening to the slight little reels that I put up there, which is so great, but there's so much more to be had when you listen to like the full thing. So thank you for sharing the short reels. Please share the podcast next. Other than that, if you have topic requests or anything you'd like to email me, you can email at hello@havenpod.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.